Hello, cool, attractive, and smart listener. Welcome to another episode of the Geek Press Podcast. I'm Noah, and today co host Lewis and I talk to our friend Kevin about the movie Elemental and get really deep into a newbie's guide to getting and buying comics. If you enjoy what you're listening to, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Help us rise to the ranks of the social media and podcasting charts so I can get drunk off internet fame and then get myself canceled. See you in a sec. Bye.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, theys and thems. My name is Luis Gutierrez, and welcome to episode 55 of the Geek Press Podcast. As always, I am joined by my rotating guest as a co-host, and today you guys know him as Mr. Don Cheeto. Mr. Chi, how's it been? How does it feel to be Iron Man's successor?
Hello, it's really great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
I saw you on the first episode of Secret Invasion last night. How was that?
What? I'm in that. Oh gosh, I had no idea. You know, Marvel will just have us stand in green rooms and just say line, and they'll just use them anywhere. So I don't really know what I'm in anymore.
And in addition to Don Cheeto joining the podcast, we have Kevin Prime. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, everybody. Hi. How's it going?
Okay.
I'll be very frank. I don't know what I forgot who Don Cheadle was in a second, and then I was like, oh fuck, how do I do this? And then I just gave up.
He plays Rhodes,
Mhm.
War Machine in.
I know it took me a minute, and then when you said Secret Invasion, I was like, oh, okay, Rhodey, got it, okay, and then I just blanked. But you know, God finds a way.
Thank you guys for bringing me on. I've been listening for many sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy, you're at above 50 now. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. We're old enough to have a second family. Like to be divorced and marry someone else. And,
congrats to you both on a successful
thank you.
podcast. It's very cool.
Thank you.
I will say, for anyone that's uninitiated, Kevin has been a supporter of the podcast for a hot minute, and he's actually shown that he listens. He genuinely listens to it. So far in the canon of our podcast, all our fans are called Kevin, and all our haters are called Rudy's. Which is because enemy of the podcast, Rudy's been on once or twice, and we love him, but he doesn't listen. He doesn't support us, and a few times he does listen, it's always us jokingly critiquing him slightly. So now he just talks shit. So that's why our enemies are called Rudy's.
Well, I've also, to be fair, been in the audience, been very vocal. I've
Mhm.
given too many notes, if any, to our generous hosts here, namely, above all, calling out spoilers for movies. But I would like everybody to know that during today's discussion of Elemental, I will loudly announce all spoilers. You will be safe from spoilers. It will be spoiler free if you haven't seen it yet. I'm here for the people. I'm glad to be on. Thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Now, usually we start this off with how our week's been, what we've been doing. I will let you take that away, Kevin. How's your week been? Have you been playing any video games, watching any TV? What have you been doing?
Yeah, dude, a good solid chunk of nerd stuff. Above all, apartment hunting. I'm looking to move into LA, but betwixt that, as far as consuming media goes, I'm a huge Warhammer nerd, absolutely massive. And the new edition of the game just came out. There's a brand new box that comes with the new edition of the game called Leviathan. I'm picking mine up as soon as we roll out of here.
Now, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. Is Leviathan like a DLC for the game, or is it just they're adding in is this an expansion that's needed, or can you play without it?
You can play without it. However, if you have nothing, it is a fantastic place to start because Warhammer is notoriously expensive. It is wildly pricey to play at the standard format of competition, which isn't normally people's format. However, it's like the basis of what you would want to have a normal game go on, which is about 2,000 points worth of miniatures on your table, and that equates to roughly $850 to $1,000,
God
depending on which
damn.
army you're playing. It is absurdly expensive. So Games Workshop, the guys who make Warhammer miniatures and they run the show, what they do is when there's a new edition of the game that comes out, which is a huge shakeup, it changes the meta. Army rules are different, character sheets, data sheets all get switched around and modified. The game is rebalanced and new rules come out.
So this is a big
When
deal.
it is, yeah, it's like a new World of Warcraft expansion somewhat.
Gotcha.
So everyone's really excited. They're all everybody at my local shop has been doing a bunch of test games, trying to play with the new rules. It's been very fun. Lots of activity going on there because it's already a niche game in the first place. But apparently, what's happened is recently a lot of people have been getting interested in and joining up.
Because of Henry Cavill.
So yeah, Henry Cavill's been a big force behind that. He plays Adeptus Custodes, and I actually just bought a Custodes army that I'll be picking up later today because I think they're really pretty.
I wanted to ask you, there's this actor who I don't know him like personally, but I've met him a few times, and his name's Raul Cooley. He he's this British actor who lives in America, but he recently, maybe within the last few years, based on his social media, got like super into Warhammer,
hmm
and he starred in a game called Warhammer Bolt Gun. Have you ever played that game?
I want to so badly because Bolt Gun is an homage to like the old school 80s style games,
To like
but
Doom and stuff. It looks really cool.
yeah, it's like what Sonic Mania was to the original Sonic games. Like, it's an homage to that original playstyle. However, it's made, with modern game design in mind, and it's apparently gotten fantastic reviews. I just haven't had the time to play it because I've been moving more away from video games and into
hmm
tabletop games, which is why I've been playing, Warhammer and D&D with you lot. Um,
What?
One of the reasons for that is because I just feel like modern video games have been getting so monetized.
That is
For
true.
Mhm.
instance, Diablo 4 recently came out. For the longest time, I've been a massive advocate and fan of Blizzard. Up until the point where allegations started coming around, then I was like,
Then he
okay, let's
became a
maybe
mega
not.
fan. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, dude. Um, when that happens, I just sort of like stopped like flying the banners, but I still have my World of Warcraft account active and all that kind of stuff. But when Diablo rolled around, um, I saw the shop and I saw the stupid microtransactions of like, oh, this skin is 3,200 shekels, and to buy shekels you need to spend increments of 20, then 60, then $100, and it's just like, oh God, it's so annoying.
Now, let me ask you, would your opinion be different if this was like Fortnite where it's free? If you didn't have to pay like a $70 like price point to get in?
Somewhat, because I think a closer relative to that is Overwatch, wherein they became free and they have battle passes. Um, Overwatch, I'm sure, as you know, being a reporter in industry, has recently completely axed their PvE program, which was the
Yeah.
benefit of the free to play. So that's just a whole different sour flavor in your mouth, which is really unfortunate. But so anyway, so for all that reasons, I've been moving more towards tabletop games, and I just realized I didn't round out why I was what Leviathan was in particular. So just to wrap it up and put a nice bow on it, Leviathan is the nice the box that Games Workshop releases alongside a major new edition because since their models are so expensive, what they do is to get people excited, to get people into it and interested in playing, they want to make a box that has a really, really high value to it for a chunk of change, but it's not going to be $800. What it is it's two armies. I said the normal size you want is like 2,000 points. These two armies individually are about 750. So really good size. It's relatively balanced, and you get two of them, which means that I can get this boxer myself, which I will later today, and be like, "Hey Noah, do you want to come play some Warhammer with me?" And then before you know it, Noah's dropping a grand on this,
Mhm.
hobby and getting sucked
The
into it
thing
like I was.
the thing is though, I'm not gonna be playing the actual game. I'm just gonna be making them kiss. I'm making them go mwah, 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 and now they're gay. Mwah, 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 and that's all I'm gonna be doing while you like roll dice to attack my armies.
That's what my wife does whenever I show her my nice painted miniatures. I'm like, "Look at all this hard work that I did. I spent all day painting this," and she takes them and she's like, they're kissing, and I'm like, "No,
I
they're
mean,
fighting."
the first game of Warhammer you and I played, that's basically what happened.
Oh my god.
You
So
rolled dice, and I was like, "Oh, no, there goes Billy. Billy, no!" And you're like, "I'm rolling the dice," and I'm just making this elaborate story that means nothing.
So, for Lewis and anybody else that's listening, my introduction to Warhammer, actually playing the game, was when Noah and I were together in London, and which is the home base of Warhammer. Well, England, not London itself, but still. I was waiting for a leather jacket to be prepared as my souvenir from London because I'm a fancy boy. And Noah was like, "Hey, there's a Warhammer store around here. You want to go check it out?" And I was like, "Hell yeah! I've always wanted to see what Warhammer is. I never really known. Let's go see." So we hop in. There's a little table that's got the ninth edition box release. I don't know what it was called, but it's basically the ninth edition version of Leviathan, all set out on a table, all the models made and painted. And the store manager came over and was like, "Hey, do you guys want to play?" And Noah and I were like, "Hell yeah!" And then he proceeds to help us, like, roll the dice. We don't know exactly what the rules are, but he's like, "You can move this guy here. This guy can attack this person." I'm off the floor with Noah because I'm the best. And then before you know it, I have like 6,000 points of Iron Hands, and here we are today. So thank you, Noah, for being the receiving end of my Warhammer Fury.
Yeah, it's no problem. It was also fun because at the store, I don't know if this is true for American stores, but at the store we were at, they let us like make and paint our own little miniature,
Oh yeah,
which was a lot of fun.
it was like a little like rotation of arts and crafts. Like you start off painting your own miniature. Once you painted your own miniature,
Sounds like you guys
you get
just
to
went
play
to
a quick game.
daycare. That's it.
It was great, dude. I loved
Parents
it.
dropped you off at daycare. Like, here, let's play some arts and crafts and stuff.
Man, I hope retirement homes are like that, cause holy shit,
Warhammer.
I'm gonna just like professionals coming in teaching you how to paint Warhammer and showing you how to play the game. Man,
You know,
millennial and
mhm.
X and Z retirement homes are gonna be so awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of nerds incoming to these places, and I feel like there's gonna be lots of like D&D and video game and that kind of shit.
And the other reason I got into Warhammer was I was actually interested in something that was a bit more social. A lot of my friends have moved away from the video games that I was playing. People stopped playing WoW, they stopped playing Overwatch, and I was like, I still want to retain something that is nerdy in flavor. But like, I was in Seattle at the time. All my friends were in California, and I didn't really have anything to like. I could go up to a bar and like do casual conversation, but I was like, I want to make a friend. Um, and when I found out that this is a game where people treat it as a hobby, you go to a store to play it, a dedicated location to play this game. It's not like you hop online on a computer. You have to go to a place where the game is prepared and exists. And then you play against strangers. I just dove into it, and ever since then, I've been having a great time. They got a bunch of new friends. We're all gonna meet up at the store today and get our boxes. Show each other like our progress and like painting miniatures. It's really cool. I'm a big fan. So yeah, that's that whole thing.
I'm happy to hear that Noah got you down this rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Hell
I'm
yeah,
glad to hear that I'm the source of your I'm the kickoff of your addiction.
you are, and I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Kevin's been talking for too long.
Yeah,
Um,
so what's been up with you, Lewis? How you been doing? What you been watching? What you been playing? What's the 411 on Louis Joshua Gutierrez?
so you know how I told you I took a break on Shameless? All right.
Yeah.
So I've been taking a break on Shameless to catch up on other TV, and I've been watching the newest season of It's Always Sunny. And
I
right
haven't seen It's Always Sunny in a minute.
so far, the season's kind of like I've only seen like 3 episodes, but there's only been about one episode out of the three that I really enjoyed. The other ones were just
Mhm,
kind of Like it was episode 3 specifically. They have the return of a fan favorite character named Cricket. He just for
mhm.
context,
Cricket's back.
he's back for one episode, and for context for people who don't watch It's Always Sunny, Cricket is like this guy. He starts off as a priest, but then the gang just
It ruined his
demolishes. They
life.
ruin his life, and now he's like a hobo pimp, like that's addicted to all sorts of
Oh my
drugs.
god.
He was a priest. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
he was
Yeah.
originally a priest, and so he hasn't been in the show. And I watch all the seasons. He hasn't been in the show for about 2 seasons, and I really missed his character. And he finally comes up in this one, and I'm just like, man, like I just felt like they didn't use his character right, you know? Like they didn't fully utilize him as well as they usually do. And I was pretty bummed out about that. But nah, it's neither here nor there. I've been watching that, and I've also finished Dave. It's the Little Dicky show.
Mhm.
It's
Dude,
like
how is that? I
it
love Lil Dicky.
it's good. I thought season 3 was a lot better than season 2
There's
because
3 seasons.
yeah. So
Dang.
the first season is like his come up. The second season is like he's right about to get signed, and then the third season is like he broke into the industry, you know?
Mhm.
And season 3 is really good. They do a better job at making you like the character a lot more, and they have a lot of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like star power. Like just without giving any spoilers away, like Brad Pitt is in the last episode,
Oh
and
my god.
he's like it's not even a cameo. He's like he has full
It's
blown
just Brad
lines.
Pitt.
And yeah, and he plays as himself, but he plays as like a caricature version of himself.
Mhm.
But like he is a main character in the last episode, just to kind of give you an idea of like how like of all the people they're able to bring in, and it was really really good.
Dude, I need to see this series. I actually started listening to Lil Dicky a little while ago.
Uh
I knew he was a rapper, but I didn't know his whole shtick was like a rapper for the people that don't like rap, and
yeah.
how it's just kind of like a lot of just really silly songs. Like,
Hmm.
I think all
Wait,
my
he's an
favorite playlists is
actual
cocaine.
rapper?
Yeah, he's an actual rapper.
Oh, I thought he was just an actor.
I
No,
know
no,
that music
he
videos.
I thought he was
What's
just
up?
an actor.
No, no. He raps, and
yeah,
I know music videos aren't much of a thing anymore. But if you guys go and see the music video for like, I think it's called like Rap Audition or something like that, it's actually really fun. It's got Snoop Dogg.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. But yeah, I finished Dave. That's so that like I knocked off another show off my list, and I'm really
Mhm.
excited because today's Saturday. Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to the Hollywood Bowl because I bought tickets a few months ago for because they're gonna have a giant show for like video game orchestras. So they're gonna be playing like Elden Ring music, God of
Video games
War.
live.
Yeah.
I went to the very first one. I think it was like in 2007 or something like that.
Nice.
It is very different back then from like what it is now. It was just really casual. They played like the major theme music for all the big video games like Mario and
Mhm.
Final Fantasy and all that, and they had like a little arcade off to the side with people that were trying to like rank up high scores. I've seen videos of recent ones. They're really cool. You're gonna have a really good show, man.
And what was funny was that I'm seeing like on Twitter now, like a lot of like my industry folks like, oh, I'm gonna be there, this and that, and I'm like, oh, that's cool because they're probably gonna go and like do something afterwards. But this was kind of like a date for my girlfriend and I, and this kind of like further solidified my plans that I'm not gonna be hanging out with industry peers at this event, and it's just gonna be for my lady and me because
That's nice.
the last few times we went to the Hollywood Bowl, we would always it like parking is such a fucking pain in the ass there when
It's tough.
yeah, even if you park like on like their little satellites areas like around the area because it's just so compact. So what my girlfriend did was because the last time we were there, they were advertising like, "Oh, take the shuttle. The shuttle will take you right like there's local shuttles in like all the nearby cities, blah 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 blah." So we were talking about it the other day, and we're like, "Hey, have you got your shuttle pass so we can go?" So so sooner like we're gonna be taking a shuttle to there, and we have maybe like 10-20 minutes after the concert ends to hop on the shuttle and take us back to where we live. So even if I wanted to, I'm not gonna hang out with them. But I was like, I'm just gonna do this because the shuttle's like it takes me such a minute just to get out of there, and parking's like close to like if I remember right, it was like 25-30 bucks, and the shuttle was just 20 bucks for the both of us. So either way, we saved some money.
Mhm.
But yeah,
And you know what? No
Pretty
matter
good.
what, if something has stacked parking, I'm not parking there. Sorry. No,
yeah.
I am not waiting for Jim in front of me and Maurice behind me to get their hell out of my way so I can leave. No, thank you.
Yeah, stack parking's a death sentence in LA.
Mm. And that's been like kind of my thing. And then this whole week has been fairly busy for me just because of work wise. I'm going to
That's good though, right?
yeah, oh yeah, it's a good problem. It's a good problem.
Nice.
And so I'm going to Anime Expo next week. And that's like a week long event. And leading up to Anime Expo, I just been getting a lot of emails from all sorts of like companies like, hey, come check out our stuff, blah 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 blah. And I've been kind of like yesterday I took time to actually sit down and like pull up a Google Doc and be like, okay, here's gonna be my schedule for Anime Expo. I need to like email these people back because some people are like, hey, come like I'm I could be vague. They're like, hey, come preview this or like you're gonna be the first one to do this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm totally down. And what was even cool was that there I could talk about this because it's like public.
Mhm.
There's this game that Xbox made called I was telling Noah about this yesterday, last night actually. there's this game that they made called Hi-Fi Rush. So for those who are unaware, it's a rhythm-based game where it's like it's all music and you're fighting robots and shit. So if you press the buttons at the right time, it's like doom doom, doom and the music gets better and better and better. So those people are gonna be at Anime Expo, and they're an Xbox game studio. Their PR team reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're gonna be here. You want to like sit down and interview us?" And I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" But the problem is,
Dude.
I haven't beat the game. So,
Oh,
so
you have homework.
yeah, I was that's what I was telling Noah last night. I was like, "Yeah, I gotta beat this game before. I think it's like next Sunday or Monday." So I'm like, I have plenty of time, and I looked it up on Google, and like the run time was like 11 hours, give or take. So I've been doing that, and I just have a lot of stuff lined up too. Like I can't really get into the specifics of other things, but one thing too that's been taking up a lot of my time, especially a lot of like my peers, is that usually during the morning, afternoons, we run through our morning routines. Like I just pretend I'm the boss. I'd be like, "Hey Kevin, here's a story about God of War. Hey Noah, here's a story about Call of Duty. Write it up." And then you're like, "All right," you're like, yes sir," and you start clickety clackety.
Yep.
But these last couple days, I don't know about today specifically, but I don't think today. But these last couple days, Microsoft has been Microsoft and the U.S. government are in court right now because they're suing one another about the Activision Blizzard merger. I know that's
Yeah, I
something.
heard about that.
Yeah, so that's been going down, and they've been streaming the hearing over Zoom, but a lot.
Really?
But yeah, so anyone could listen, but obviously Zoom has a limit, so people have been live streaming the Zoom meeting. So a lot of us have just been like trying to find a streamer
Oh,
just playing it, and
dude.
we've been getting lucky, and we've just been listening to that and like writing stories based off of what they're talking about.
That's
And
actually fast. I had no idea that's going on like right now. Has anything interesting come up yet?
yeah, there was a lot. There was here's three at the top of my head. One that I wrote, and then the two that the other my colleagues wrote. So the one that I wrote was that the reason why Microsoft had bought Starfield was because they were afraid of PlayStation giving ZeniMax Studios, which is the parent company of Bethesda. They were afraid that they were going to give them a lot of money to skip Starfield and have that be a exclusive because they had already did that with Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. So they're like, no, fuck that. We're just gonna buy this company to prevent that from happening.
Wait a minute. So that in and of itself is enough to be considered like monopolizing, right? That's a monopolizing action to take, if I understand things correctly. Is that right? Do you know?
I I don't want to say something because that's like very specific like law stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be so difficult to prove that, right? Like, because unless there's like written documents from people representing Microsoft saying, "Hey, we need to buy these guys because they are competition." Like, there's just how do you catch that, right? It's such a fascinating topic. I'm so curious about all of it.
Mhm. And then the other two was that the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, was like he said something along the lines of like if we make Call of Duty an Xbox exclusive after all these promises we made, the he was like the brand will suffer like eerie like we would take a blow, like no one would like us anymore because we've been promising that it's going to be multi-platform even after the deal goes through.
I mean, yeah, just look at what happened to Overwatch after they broke their promise. Their
Exactly.
social media sentiment is like in the absolute dumpster.
And then the last one, the other one was that another one too was that Phil Spencer, he was like, "Yeah, we lost the console wars. PlayStation's beat." That was but I feel like everyone kind of knows that at this point. But
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, where do you go from there? Because PlayStation has definitely stepped up their game in the last 2
mhm,
years. They're fantastic exclusives, amazing
mhm.
console, great support, lots of indie support too. PlayStation Pass rules. Like, Xbox has such a pedigree to it though,
Mhm.
and they're obviously not gonna just burn off like Blockbuster did. What happens next is
And
a huge question.
and then the other one that my other editor reported on was that they had said they're like, yeah, the next Elder Scrolls is at least 5 years away, and we don't even know what platform it's gonna.
Oh my god,
But yeah, that's been my week. Noah, what about you?
that's fascinating, man.
Thank you, thank you.
I've been not doing much compared to the two of you. I've been existing. I've gotten really into this book. I'm only like 10 chapters in. I talked to Lewis about this yesterday. It's called Star Wars Bloodline by Claudia Gray. It's basically about Leia and her adventures in the years before The Force Awakens. And it kind of dives into the political space that allowed the First Order to rise and like the ineffectiveness of the government they eventually had to kind of
Wow.
replace the empire, and it's very interesting because, like, in this book, well, first of all, she's a 40-year-old protagonist, which you don't really see a lot. So she's a 40-year-old woman just trying to get shit done, and you very much get to see, like, her as, like, a princess, as a general, and how she kinda has to, like, have a bit of a fight with the younger generation and their ideals, and how the Senate that they created, kinda fell apart, and she kinda sees it, and she's like, "Oh, this is kinda bullshit." And
Dude,
how it's almost reminiscent of today. Like, the parties are such it's such bullshit that the parties do so much fighting, they ultimately are ineffective,
When was this book
and
written?
this book was written in 2016.
So that was like the height of like Trump.
Yeah, you could say this was definitely, like you could say it
wow.
was very Trumpism, but, because,
You sold me
the
on this book.
yeah, it's really good. I'll lend it to you when I'm done with it if you want it, but, it's very interesting. It has a whole thing where they're like, "Oh, there's signs of, like, a new criminal empire," and everyone's like, "Oh, well, we need evidence, da, 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 da," and Leia's just like, "Fuck you guys, I'm gonna go check it out. Fuck you guys." Like, if there's a new criminal empire exploiting weaknesses, we gotta do something about it. But then, of course, there's, like, politics, and like, "Oh, well, Leia, you're a populist. We need to send a centrist with you. You can't just da 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 da," and it becomes a whole thing, and it's very interesting. It's an interesting book.
I
Uh
oftentimes forget like how
Mhm.
politically charged the Star Wars story is, and then I
Oh,
watch
yeah.
like episodes 1 through 3 again, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
Mhm. I mean, come on, people, people
Yeah.
forget that the rebels were inspired by the Viet Cong from like, George Lucas himself said that. There's a
Are
lot
you
of
serious,
Yeah, look that up.
dude? What?
Search, the influence of Vietnam on Star Wars, and you'll find some surprising stuff, but,
Oh my god.
yeah, and you know what? That's actually tackled in this book where, like, the guy, one of her opponents who she has to work with by force kind of like, oh, he kind of admires the empire and the order they were able to establish, but he's like, "Oh, the leaders were bad, but the system was good." Like, that's basically his thing, and he's just and sh Leia's just like, "Yeah, I did some stuff in the rebellion that was kinda messed up," and he's like, "Oh, so you admit it that you guys were domestic terrorists?" And Leia's just like, "What the fuck? Where did this come from?"
Oh
And
my god.
it's a whole thing. It's just really interesting. I enjoy it a lot.
That is fascinating. I also
Mhm.
forget like how massive Star Wars lore is beyond the movies. Like the number of graphic novels, straight up comics, and just
Mhm.
traditional novels is mind-boggling when someone who actually like reads that stuff starts talking about it,
Mhm.
because it's like wow, there's actually a massive field of depth to this that's worth checking out. And it gets really sci-fi too. Like not that Star Wars in and of itself isn't sci-fi, right? But I
Yeah.
whenever I go into the wiki and I'm just going into Wikipedia black hole, I'm bored at work. I'm looking through stuff, and then I come across like, oh, there's straight up magic. There's there's like there's telekinesis. There's like all these traditional sci-fi elements
Mhm.
that sort of get wrapped up into a prettier bow for the movies, but it's just so like blatantly like futuristic sci-fi. It's so cool.
Mhm. There's a lot of stuff, and I mean, the Legends canon is even bigger. I think I wanna say back in the early '90s, I think, there was, Star Wars released a trilogy of books called the Thrawn Trilogy, and, that did so well that it kind of helped to spin an entire, like, Legends canon of, like, dozens of books that, like, a lot of people really do care about. There's lots of characters, if you heard of them, like Mara Jade, Yuuzhan Vaughn, Thrawn himself, like, there's a lot of characters from that. So, Star Wars has a lot of stuff that you can get into aside from the movies, books, video games, comics, all that stuff. So, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff.
So So I have heard of Legends before, and that was actually because my most recent black hole binge of Star Wars was like finding out what the origin of the dark side and the light side was. And I remember
Mhm,
there's a well, and there was like there's something of knowledge and something of power. And there
mhm,
is this being that like took part in both and became this like destructive entity. long story short, it was all wrapped up in phrasing called legends, and I was wondering,
Mhm.
is that like a separate canonical segment of Star Wars? Like, where does that lie
That
Mhm.
in the grand rule of truth for Star Wars history and story?
so as I
All
was
right,
saying, Star Wars
Mhm.
Legends
legends.
is it's right before Disney bought Star Wars. That's what's kind of referred as to as like the Legends because that's no longer like canon. But like Noah was saying, or we're kind of like getting at, was that Legends Disney takes a lot of inspiration from Legends still, like with Thrawn, and there's they even like canonized Darth Revan, whatever his name is. So they do take a lot of inspiration still from that, but they more or less kind of do their own things, you know?
Official, unofficial.
Yeah, but that used to
Okay,
be the canon back in like the Lucas era, like back in like the 90s, 80s, like even like early to mid 2000s.
got it.
But yeah, that's it. But
That's right.
Yeah.
we wanted to talk a little bit about some cinema, and I know
Yes.
you just saw Elemento. My girlfriend is really wants to see that. I really want to see it. What'd you think about it?
I have a lot to say about Elemental, and also like animation as a genre because as you guys know, I'm a massive nerd for movies and I
Mhm.
have a particular affinity for animation. Um, so to start things off, I will say it's a Pixar movie. Um, it's what you expect if you are in the mood to just be able to take your kids, take your family, go with your mother, whatever, sit down in a theater, watch a movie. Elemental is great for that. It does its job totally,
Mhm.
middle of the road.
I have a quick question. Quick question
Yeah,
before you proceed. Is Elemental Zootopia but with elements?
it kind of is. So this
Okay.
is where my criticisms kick in
Okay.
a little
You go
bit.
for it. You go for it. I just wanted to ask that. You go for it.
I think that it was kind of like so on one hand, if you want to be able to see a movie, have a good time, like go see it for sure. If you want to be obnoxious and look at it from like a critical standpoint, compare it against masterpieces, look at Pixar's history, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff, I think it falls short. um Pixar in like through animation has developed themselves to be an absolute powerhouse of incredible storytelling, fantastic visuals, and one of the things that I think people overlook a lot, but I love to pay attention to in movies, is they have a very Pixar flavored orchestra. Um, Back in the day when I was in college, I took a class on music and film, and it sort of made me pay more attention to the work that the composers do when they want to you know give some flavor to the movies. And if you go back and you watch movies like A Bug's Life or Monsters Inc. or Incredibles, there's this very distinct a set of melodies and tones and recognizable themes that you can hear come from these movies that are so Pixar. Like and even considering Toy Story, I think is the most famous example. Um, and when I was watching Elemental, it's just so not there. It felt like, and it was sort of like the cherry on top when I'm listening to this movie that I recognize is coming from one of the best studios in animation, and it's just like the whole background all the way through is just the generic, movie background orchestra chord progressions. Like it was really boring,
Hmm.
and it was sort of a bummer to me because Pixar had lost their Pixar music, and they stuck a hip hop song in the middle, which sure, fine, that's okay, but it seems so out of place because compare that against Across the Spider Verse, where you have the entire soundtrack that is, just absolutely laden with hip hop music that really fits the bill and is just used so artfully. It's
Mhm.
it's a clear night and day difference. So it at the end of the movie, I just felt like it was less like, oh, I watched a nice Pixar movie, and more like, oh, this is a studio that had leadership that was cracking a whip to produce content and get it out the door so that they could take in their Pixar chunk of change that they could expect, which, as we heard from the news, did not happen. I think that what I read
It
was
under it undersold.
Elemental's opening weekend was the absolute worst in all of Pixar history. Below even,
Damn.
it was below The Good Dinosaur, which got really rough reviews, and it was below Onward, which in and of itself was a fine movie, but it opened during the beginning of the pandemic when people straight up weren't allowed to go into theaters. This did worse than that. Um, and I think it speaks a lot to it. They've sort of ran their creative power thin, and it was unfortunate to see. But that being said, though, the visuals that they're able to produce from that studio is still above so much else that's coming out in movies right now. It's so cool to see what they can do with their
Hmm.
software because they're able to do incredibly difficult things. Like how do you give water emotion? How do you make someone made out of water stand out against a background of water? And it's really cool. It's very interesting to see. They're still
Now,
leagues ahead in that regard.
would you say this movie was better than Strange Worlds? Because I didn't really care for that one.
I'd put it in the same league. I'd
Ah, okay.
I'd say it's a similar
Oh,
flavor.
I think it's very funny that you bring up The Good Dinosaur because the director and the writer of this
Wow,
movie, Peter San, worked on The Good Dinosaur.
Jesus.
That's very funny. And he worked on Elementals. That's very funny that you connected those 2 together. He was a director, and there was, like, 3 other writers, but yeah, that's very funny that you connected that without knowing.
Fire them. Get them out of here.
Get him out of here.
I just
I think
so
mhm.
sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to talk forever.
Oh,
It's
I
all you.
just wanted to say, I think it's interesting because Elemental, lasted the production on that lasted several years. It was sort of a pandemic it was definitely affected by the pandemic. It was worked in studio and at filmmakers' homes. And I think what you
Dang.
said about, like, the visualizations of, like, the character, of how, like, fire moves and how water moves, it seems very interesting. I wonder if do you feel like if it had a different and or, like, better story, it would have been more successful?
I actually have some. Yes, I do
Mhm,
because I think that the story it was marketed very strangely, right? When we
mhm.
saw the trailers, it was like, okay, here's
It kind of
Romeo,
looked like a
Juliet,
coming
different
to
elements,
age
blah blah
thing.
blah.
Yeah.
The song that's been danced to a million times before. However, when you're watching the movie, it actually has it starts off with a very meandering theme, right? Like the first hour of it is kind of like trying to find its footing. It's awkward. It's filling the air with like visual puns, which is it's fine, sure, but it's a stark contrast against an absolute like
Mhm.
masterpiece of storytelling like Ratatouille. It eventually finds its footing about halfway through, but it's not at all the movie. Well, it's kind of the movie that we thought it was going to be, but there's actually some more really interesting bits. I'll make sure to give no spoilers here. But
No spoilers.
one of the themes develops to be some like um how like urban planning will like sometimes circumvent the less fortunate and will force them to like sort of fend for their own, which is a really mature theme for a Disney Pixar movie, and it's really cool to see. But they sort of held off on it for a really long time. Um,
Oh, see, now
and
that would have been interesting, especially when you look at, like, how LA is set up and the
exactly,
history of highways and particularly in East LA.
yeah,
Like, that could have been interesting.
it's like how an immigrant family was forced to survive in an area that was overlooked by city planning and development. Um, which if they stuck from that with that from the beginning and instead of just filling the air with fart jokes,
Mhm.
I think that they could have had a really strong story. But it's so you could definitely feel that the showrunner was cracking a whip. I think it's unfortunate. I think it would have
Mm,
been a lot more
mhm.
successful. It would have been talked about a lot more because that's not a theme that shows up in movies aimed towards like a family audience, and it's important because it affects so many people, especially all of us coming from the LA area are hyper aware that this is a really important thing
Mhm.
to you know to know about. And I think that they really split the story of the movie between that and Romeo and Juliet, and it just themes clashed, story was awkward. I think it wrapped up nicely in the end, but at the end of the day, I think Pixar missed the mark.
I think
That's a
that's
bummer.
interesting to bring up, especially 'cause, going back to Mr. Peter San, apparently, Elemental draws inspiration from his youth, where he grew up as a son of immigrants in New York City during the 1970s.
Very clear that that's what happened there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that I 100% see that.
But
I
you
think
failed, son. You failed. Leave and never come back.
I was successful at introducing the idea and making you want to talk about it, but it's like I want more of that. I want so much more of that,
Mhm.
and they didn't. I think in part it's to keep the themes light because you want to be able to take your kids to this. And if you market it as like a really heavy movie, I think it's easier for people to skip. And I think when they were marketing it, they were relying a lot on their pedigree. They were like, "Hey, Pixar's got a new movie, come see it." But I saw it, and now I'm talking about it, and I'm telling you guys, it's mid.
Okay, so do you think people should watch it?
Yes, um, I think that I love movies. I think it's fantastic to go see a movie in a
Mhm.
theater. I 100% support people seeing movies in their local theaters. Um, I think it's a fantastic art form. I think it's fun to see animation. I think it's fun to be able to see a movie where you can literally like go with your whole family and take your parents, take your kids, take your brother, sister. Because normally when I'm seeing a movie and I'm being obnoxious about it, I see like discrete shit that only myself and my wife would be interested in. But
Mhm.
it's nice to be able to have a day where you could easily invite close friends and family and stuff like that. I think that's a key component of the movie realm that is worth seeing. So I'd say go see it. um, don't have the cynical lens that I did. Just go and enjoy it. Reflect on it afterwards if you like, but I am not upset that I went to go see that movie.
See, I just feel like at the movie theaters right now, there isn't like movies I want to see. The only one that's kind of piqued my interest is that Wes Anderson film.
That's out, man. I'm
Oh,
about to get tickets for that. I actually think I already did.
Yeah,
There's
like,
a lot of good movies coming out.
yeah, because Transformers was, I mean, you know what you're getting with Transformers, no hate on that. But,
Exactly.
but
yeah, like, you get what you see on the tin, you
yeah,
know?
The Flash, fuck Ezra. And the movie just looks
Yep.
like hot
Yeah.
garbage. And like now Elementals, I'm hearing this, I'm just like, ah man, like the only one I really wanted like if I had to pick between the three, I was gonna choose maybe Elementals and then Transformers. But I was just like, fuck, there's like not like I feel like right as of right now, there's nothing out, you know?
There's a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of even more good stuff on the horizon. For instance, we just saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's an absolute oasis in a desert right now. It was so good, and it was good to remember what Marvel is capable of. Um,
Yeah.
I agree with you though. I think the last like the first quarter of this year has been really dry. But however, um, Daisy and I, my wife, for listeners, we've already bought I think like 6 movie tickets for movies coming out, 2 for both of us. Because so
Damn.
3 movies. She's looking at me like we're not seeing that many. But anyway, so we've already got tickets for Barbie. We got tickets for Oppenheimer.
Oh.
We've got tickets for Wes Anderson. Um, and
Astro
then
City or something, right?
Asteroid City. We're definitely gonna see Gran Turismo. Very excited about that. What else? What else? There's a lot of cool stuff on its way.
Mhm.
And is there anything animated? I think Studio Leica is doing something. I absolutely adore Studio Leica. If you guys have
Is,
not gone out of your way to go see Studio Leica movies,
which one's Leica? What movies have they made?
It's like,
Coraline,
mhm,
Oh, okay, okay. Fun
Floating
fact.
Two
Kubo and
Strings,
the Two
Fun
Strings.
fact about that studio. I saw this on TikTok. That
Nike.
so
Yeah.
they're backed by Nike.
Yes.
Did you know about
Yes,
that,
they
Noah?
are.
Yeah, I believe it's like the owner's son or
Yeah, it's
something.
like straight up nepotism. That shit's fucking
Yeah,
hilarious.
I think that's very funny because it's like nepotism baby, but for good?
Yeah,
It
like
is.
this is the one form of nepotism I will support.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Studio Leica is not a profitable movie studio. They do
Yeah,
not
they do
turn a
not make
profit when they make
money.
the movies. However, the CEO of Studio Leica is the son of the CEO of Nike, and so essentially Nike is bankrolling Studio Leica, which is why whenever there's a new Studio Leica movie that comes out, there's a collaboration with Nike, and it's actually really cool looking. Um, it's literally a film studio that is run by people that just they have a story to tell, and they just want to be able to do it. They do it out of the passion. They don't make money off of it,
Mhm.
and what they turn out is just some of the most like charming animated films that I've ever seen.
You
Um,
know how they'd make money is if they did a Legend of Zelda movie. I've been putting that out into the universe for years. I feel like Laika and Legend of Zelda would work together brilliantly.
I've never
Leg-
heard you say that once, Noah.
Oh, 'cause we don't talk about Laika.
if
I
there was a Legend of Zelda movie, I imagine it being a lot like the Mad Max Fury Road movie. Very few speaking roles, except by like not the main character. Link is just there, silent the whole time. Everyone's talking around him.
Well,
Tom Hardy.
well, you know what? They might do it because the Mario movie, and that movie was great.
Mario
I loved it. I'll fight you if you
was
disagree.
a good example of when success can come from a brand name. I think that the movie itself was really good
That's your
for
way
its
of
its
saying. I feel like that's your way of saying you didn't like it.
I liked it, but I think that something that can't be ignored is it made almost a billion, over a billion, an
Mhm.
absolute
Crazy.
obscene amount of money. And Elemental made like what, like 20% of that, 15, like a tiny chunk. And it's I think it's worth remarking on the popularity of the IP behind it because there was this article that I read recently that was saying, part of the contribution to Elemental's lack of success is it doesn't have an existing IP backing it, which, we can't really ignore being a huge contributing factor to movies coming out right now.
I don't feel like
Mhm.
that's too fair, though.
It's not fair, but it's, we got Guardians of the Galaxy, Gran Turismo, Super Mario Bros. Tons and tons of sequels left and right all over the place.
Either sequels or they're
And
from recognizable brands. It's just really
yeah,
hard to see new things break through. I mean, look, we have like a fifth Indiana Jones movie for a reason.
I'm not seeing that.
Didn't the reviews already come out for that like super early, and everyone said it was shit?
Yeah,
I don't
you know how studios do early reviews with people
Mhm.
that they invite to see it because they know they're gonna write good shit about it, and they basically all like put it in the dumpster. Yeah, that's that's what happened with that. So I'm gonna avoid it. I'm good.
And
I mhm.
speaking of like good IPs, so I know you were, well, all of us here were big fans of the Spider-Verse movie that just came out,
Oh my
and
god, dude.
this kind of like led you to reading some comics about Spider-Punk.
Oh my gosh, Lewis, that's a good
I
transition.
Thank
Yes,
you.
That was
I saw
good.
Across the Spider Verse
I
because
had to do it before you
um
guys kept talking. That's why I did it
yeah,
quick.
I could have gone on. So, in my opinion, Into the Spider Verse is my favorite movie of all time, and what I would consider probably to be one of the best animated movies ever made.
It's
Um,
getting me mad because no one's talking about Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots is just as good.
that actually was a really good movie. I
Yeah.
was blown away by how like much I. Okay, so, anyways, long story short, I like Spider Man, so I went to see the new Spider Man movie. Um, just as good, just as into it. Fantastic, 100%. It's gonna win, best animated feature this year, like, hands down, no competition. Um, I thought Spider Punk was cool as hell. I go to play Warhammer at a store that's not actually a designated Games Workshop store, but it's a comic book store. And I was like, hey, while I'm here, maybe I can find a comic for Spider Punk. So I go up to the counter, I ask the guy, I'm like, hey, dude, I've never bought a comic before in my life. I'm interested in this character. What do you got for me? He
Uh-huh.
goes back into his back shelves. He just reaches in, pulls out, I think this like collection of 6 different series or individual books,
The
like
trade
collected
paperback.
into one singular book. Yeah.
Mhm.
And he hands it to me and it's got Spider-Punk on the front. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm good. So that was my first time ever buying a comic in a comic book store before. But I think it was relatively straightforward because from what I understand, comic storylines can be a little bit complicated. For instance, I follow comic book pages on Facebook because I'm really into the characters, the movies, and all that kind of stuff. Like, I just follow the Marvel page on Facebook, and every so often I'll see like new comic book, Thor #1, and I'm like, how is there a #1 if this character has been established for like since the 60s? And I've never really known how comic book story arcs work before, and I know you two are very well versed in comics and storylines and all that kind of stuff. So my question to you is, how do you begin
You don't.
if you're interested in a character?
You don't. You just walk away.
You
You
don't.
save your money. You live. You go touch grass and make love to a man or woman.
I would say that if someone was interested in starting World of Warcraft, but I mean,
So okay, so to explain that, where it's like, oh, Thor #1. Usually, what that indicates is that they have a new staff working on that. They have a new team. So let's say, for the sake of conversation, the three of us are a team,
yeah,
and we've been working, and we managed to get Thor to like issue number 25. Whatever reason, our thing finishes. Either we sucked at it, or we told our story and left. after that, a whole new team will come in and be like, okay, this is story number one now, to indicate that, like, oh, the Kevin, Luis, and Noah run is done. Now it's time for the Rudy, Ansem, and Quincy run. You know, like that. This
Huh.
is story number one, and so it can get very confusing. And oftentimes too, they'll reference like what they like. Rudy's team would sometimes reference what we did in our run, or sometimes they'll be like, hey, that never even fucking happened, and that happens more than you will think, where a team will come in and just kind of redcon that, be like, yeah, so in Kevin's run where Thor grabbed two hammers, he was hallucinating the whole time because Loki, they'll make up some bullshit to like redcon it,
Yeah.
or they'll be like, oh, the reason why he had two hammers was because he is more worthier than he's ever been, something like that.
Is there any like normalization, like a central story that doesn't have these like crazy offshoots that you can reference if someone's interested in learning more about the character for the first time, or do you just have to pick one of these runs and go with it?
I would say it varies just because now, like, Noah could probably speak a little bit more on this than me, but I think there are like definitive stories. It's like, oh, if you want a Spider-Man story, you go to this. You want a Captain America story, you go to that one,
Yeah.
Noah, do you want to take it away a little bit on this one
Could you rephrase the question?
I'm
in the
wondering
form of
i-
a sentence?
Yeah, in
I'm
the form
wondering
of
if there is like a small variety of storylines for a particular character, is there a central prominent storyline that you can target down if you're interested in just generally understanding the hero or the
yeah,
particular subject, or is it exclusively these varying offshoots that you just have to pick one and go with it?
there are definitely more well-known and defined stories that you can jump on top of. Like, for instance,
Example.
if you like the X-Men and you're like, oh, I like the Dark Phoenix. There are specifically like collected stories that will just tell the story of the Dark Phoenix, and you can just read that,
Okay.
and you don't have to worry about anything that happened else. You kind of they try to kind of file this together so that you don't need to know anything else. You kinda are presented with the characters, and you're like, "Okay, this is what they can do, this is the story that's happening." So I feel like it's meant to be packaged so if you don't know, but you're interested in the concept, you'll do well. And I will say that seeing all those number ones, that is confusing, but what Lewis has said is absolutely correct. I will say that the comics nowadays are aware of how much people are being drawn to them by these outside media, so they do try to make it new person friendly. So if it's like a complicated character, they will try to like slide you into it easy with the issue
Mhm.
one. And I will say there are definitely definitive stories for certain characters, but I would say you can really start wherever you want, and if the writer's doing their job, they'll make it easy for you to understand.
Uh,
Okay, cool.
Also, too, I would say like a good thing to, if you're trying to ease your way into comics, do what you're doing, where in a sense where it's like you're doing these off-world stories, because I feel like the off-world stories, they majority of the time they always have a beginning and a middle,
Mhm.
Mhm,
so like your Spider Punk one, I don't know too much about the Spider Punk run, like his comics, but I know for a fact it's probably like the Spider-Man 2099 series that I read. They're all limited runs, and it's like, all right, they tell the story and they get the fuck out. It's not an ongoing where it's like issue 1 through like 40, oh shit, what happened between 10 and 15,
mhm.
Mhm.
So
And,
those are always good
did
ones
you
to go.
did you read it yet, Kevin?
No, I've only gotten through the first couple panels because I'm getting ready for
Oh, okay.
Warhammer.
Well, I will say that, like, for instance, I know in that first issue, because I have the first issue, that,
Mhm.
I showed it to you,
Yeah, yeah.
that in the first issue, they reference things so that you won't be lost. Like, they give a mini recap, like, "I'm Spider-Punk, here's my spider band, this is the
Let's do
shit
this
we've
one
done so
last time.
far."
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's a reference to things they've done, so you're not like, "Wait, why is this happening?" Like, they try to set the stage. So, it's more intimidating than it is, you know?
that's cool. All right, so you can just like sort of grab something off the shelf if it's a character you recognize, go for it, have a good time, and not
Mhm,
be like, oh, I read this thing that immediately that has been retconned and is a side story to the actual story.
mhm.
Or is that still like a risk? Can you still pick up a series, sorry, a run for a character you like and unknowingly be like, oh, this is an offshoot that doesn't actually have relevance in any particular main story?
The thing is, even if it doesn't have relevance in the story, as long as you enjoyed it, that's what matters.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true, huh?
there are plenty of offshoot stories that don't matter in, like, the main story, but that doesn't mean it's not worth any less than, like, the main shoot.
No, I need to follow
No.
the rules of the comics. I need instructions on how to read.
uh,
That's cool though. Is
mhm.
there any particular like? Do you guys have more of a focus on the characters, or do you follow any particular um, illustrators or writers when you
Uh,
pick out comics?
let me go first.
Yeah, you go
I'll give you some
first.
time to brainstorm. Noah recently got me on the Tom Taylor bandwagon, maybe
Yeah.
within the last few years. So Tom Taylor he's a renowned writer. He mainly he exclusively works for DC now, but he has this series, and I think you would like it a lot because I know you're a fan of horror and you're a fan of
Yeah,
like kind of like, oh, what if like the most craziest shit happens? So
yeah.
he has this whole fucking world called Deceased, and the basic plot, without giving anything away, is that uh Doomsday, I believe, is what, no, what's his name? Fuck, what?
Dark Side.
Darkseid. There we go. Darkseid manages to capture Cyborg and fucks with his insides, and things go horribly wrong, and essentially creates a zombie virus. And anyone who uses like their phone or any kind of electricity, I forget the specifics, but
It's technology. It's like
yeah,
a techno
yeah,
virus.
anyone who
Hmm.
uses technology gets infected with the zombie virus. And once everyone kind of realizes what's going on, it's kind of too late. And all the heroes become infected, all the villains become infected, and it creates these like weird alliances between people. And it's like Superman is obviously, like the pillar of hope, and he's like trying his damnedest to be like, guys, don't worry, we got this, while looking at like his best friends become zombies. And it's
Jesus.
yeah, so they have a bunch of them. Like I think they have three main deceased ones
Mhm.
that you can just read, but they have a fuck ton of spin-offs too that you can read. That's a really, really good one.
Okay.
And then another one that I would recommend, he's still writing this and they need one more issue, but this one has probably I it they're apples to oranges, what I'm about to recommend, and it's another off-world one. It's called Dark Knight's Steel. It's basically Game of Thrones, but for DC. It's a medieval esque DC, like the the Cal Owls, which are like the Supermans. They have
Yeah.
their own empire. Uh, fuck, who are the other ones?
The
Like the
Amazonians have their own
Amazonians have their own
empire.
empire, and then like Black Lightning and his people have their own empire, and they're all just going to war. Like they're like, and at the same time, while they're going to war, there's like outside factors like coming into play and trying to like, yes, like you do this, you do that, or like we need to stop this war before it's too late. And it's
Dang,
really,
dude.
really good. So those are two that I could recommend to you. It's Dark Knights of Steel and The Deceased. And for the Marvel side, just because I've been tweeting about this a lot as of late too. I'm a huge fan of Daredevil. He's one of my all-time favorite characters, and I believe this is probably the only Marvel series that I'm actually reading at the moment. But it's Daredevil's current run. I forget what it is, but if you just look up Daredevil 2023, it'll be that one. And
Specifically by writer Chip Zdarsky.
yes, by that gentleman, he is
Mm,
knocking it out the park.
mhm.
And it's pretty much like the basic plot so far is that, have you watched the Daredevil Netflix series?
I've actually seen, I think, a maximum of like 4 or 5 episodes,
Okay.
but I do understand like the majority of the story of it just
So
from like media.
Wait,
so
what?
okay, we'll hop into that later. So
I'm gonna.
Daredevil, he is trained by a group of assassins, and his whole thing is that like his whole like story is that he was supposed to be in charge of I forget the faction's name, but they were gonna take down these army of evil assassins called the Fist. And the whole thing for this current Daredevil run is that he's building an army, and he's going after the Fist. Like they're finally gonna end the war, you know? But the catch
That's sick.
is that the Punisher, Frank Castle, is the leader of the
Ooh,
Fist. And he
ooh.
like normally too, Punisher always kicks his ass. But now he has like demonic powers and he's like on steroids. So yeah,
That's
the
awesome.
Punisher is even stronger than what he usually is. So that's
Dang, dude.
I will always recommend the Daredevil ones because they're always so good. And they're
That's cool.
and unlike I feel like too, like I can't really speak to like other Marvel ones, but like unlike like your Spider-Mans or like maybe even Captain America's, this one always gets pretty fucking gritty too. So if you're a fan of like kind of mature-esque stories, this one's it.
Very nice. All right. Good to know, man. Thank you. Just got some solid recommendations. Um, Last question on the topic of comics, unless you guys want to continue it on
Oh
and
yeah,
stretch it out.
Noah, do you want to recommend a few before?
I
Oh
was
yeah,
about
yeah,
to
please.
say, I like your question of like, oh, is it a character or is it a writer you follow?
Yeah.
Because more often than not, we see certain writers associated with certain characters. Like for instance, if you're looking for Miss Marvel, like Kamala Khan, G. Jello Wilson, she's done like 5 volumes of that. So there
Oh,
are certain writers that are known for certain characters.
okay.
So you can always kind of combine the two if you want. Like Scott Snyder did Batman for like 100, I don't know how many issues, like 60 issues or something. He did a lot of issues of Batman. You can always look at certain writers and kind of follow where they go. So if you're ever like wondering like is there a difference? Is there that? You can kind of pair the two together.
They're synonymous.
Yeah, they can be. Like,
Okay.
there are definitely certain writers, like Gail Simone did, like, a run on Wonder Woman, like, she did that, or, certain writers like, "Oh, that's a Batman writer, or that's a Superman writer." And, so you can always follow certain artists or for certain comics. I will tell anyone to buy whatever they seem interested. I'm gonna give everyone a life hack right now. I've been meaning to say this life hack for a minute. 100% go to if you have the ability and the money to go to a comic book store, go for it. That's the best way to support the industry is to go to a comic book store and buy stuff that looks interesting and buy it there. But if you can't do that and there's no comic book stores near you and shipping is too expensive, let me tell you a little life hack I've learned. Go to Amazon, look up whatever character, whatever you want, and go to the lowest price section. There are certain books that are
Huh.
like $5. Shipping $3.99, so you get it for like 8 something, and it'll ship to you fast, and you're good.
Very
And
nice.
usually a lot of these sellers, especially if you're in the US, a lot of these sellers are like, comic book stores or their libraries or they're secondhand. So you're getting these books secondhand, but you don't have to pay the something price in order to get it. Like,
I
for
do love
instance.
supporting my
Mhm,
local comic book store. That's the thing I'm happy to do.
mhm. For instance, I have this. If you want to get into Superman, I recommend. I bought this. It's called American Superman American Alien. This book is interesting because and Superman's technically not in it. It's about the growing up life of Clark Kent and how the journey around him in his youth formed his mindset of Superman. It's a fantastic origin story,
Huh.
and normally
Interesting.
it's 24.99, but I bought it from a library in, like, Kentucky for maybe, like, $7.
Dang, dude. Not a bad
So,
idea.
it's not a bad idea if you're on a budget, honestly, it's better to buy it from these independent sellers who go through Amazon, and you can get a pretty good price. So if you can't go to the comic book store, that's my life hack. Uh, yeah, that's all I really have to say, aside from whatever character looks interesting to you, go ahead and try it. And hey, if you go to a comic book store and they have a dollar bin, there's nothing wrong with just buying random shit and see what works for you.
Also,
Is it? Yeah,
another
go ahead.
quick recommendation. I never
Mhm.
read it myself, but I watched like read it to me. If you like Batman, Batman was the only one I could testify for. But it's Batman Year One, and it's just kind of like as the name suggests, it's Batman as he's just starting off as Batman, and the whole series, it's like he's like chasing down like the Penguin or I forget who he's chasing down, and he's like, "Shit, is my grappling hook in my right pocket or my left pocket?" And like as he's fighting, he's like Batman has like ninja reflexes, and as he's fighting, he's like, "Okay, do I kick? Do I do this?" And as he's thinking, because he's thinking too much about it, he'll get knocked on the floor, or like when he's jumping between building, he'll grab it the wrong way and like break his arm. He's like, "Okay, now I know not to grab it like this."
Dude, I have this funny
Mhm.
visual in my head right now of Batman practicing being Batman by letting loose a literal penguin in his house, and he's just like running around trying to catch it using his utility belt,
That's
swinging
essentially
from
the
chandeliers and
that's essentially the comic, yeah.
If you
shit.
like the Batman movie, I would suggest the comic.
But
Okay.
yeah, that's a really
Very good.
good one is Batman Year One. The other ones I can't because I know they have like a Flash Year One, Wonder Woman Year One. I've never looked into those, so I can't really tell you if they're good or not.
All right. Last question for you guys. Um, I understand that, going through Wikipedia dark holes, there's large like events of singular importance that happens, and like the larger universe of the comic book heroes.
Hmm?
For instance, one of them I think is like the Infinity Stone arc, or Secret Invasion, or the upcoming Avengers movie. Not King, the one that's after that.
Secret Wars.
Secret Wars. I understand Secret Wars is like a massive story in the Marvel universe. Is there, if someone is interested in going into comics but doesn't want to do something as small as a singular hero, but wants to like read of like a larger event that affects like the larger comic book universe as a whole, is there a story you guys would recommend for something like that?
The first one, just because we're talking about Secret Wars, I do like the Jonathan Hickman run of Secret Wars, where it's essentially Doom. Doom's one of my all-time favorite characters, and I love because how fucking full of himself he is. He
I heard he's insane,
yeah,
like hugely important.
yeah, he's one of the big hitters in the Marvel universe, sure. And essentially, what happened? This is when Marvel Comics had two separate universes, but they were equally as important. It was the Ultimate Universe. That's the one where they like most famously known for introducing Miles Morales. And
Hmm.
then they had the main universe, which had like Peter Parker, and those were separate universes. Occasionally there was slight crossover, but nothing crazy. So what had happens in this run is that Doctor Doom merges all bunch of realities together and plays God, and all the heroes from both universes have to band together and stop Doom from fucking being God. So that's a good one. I always recommend to people. Another one is going back to Daredevil. It's called Devil's Reign. So pretty much what happens is that Fisk becomes like the mayor, or I forget, is it the mayor or governor? One of the two.
Mayor.
Okay, he becomes the mayor of New York City, and he outlaws heroes. And for some reason, in the Marvel universe, New York City is like the capital of the world. Everyone lives in New York for whatever fucking reason. And all the heroes are like, shit, we're stuck here. There's nothing we can do. And they're trying to dethrone Fisk, and it's very Trumpian. Like it's commentary for Trump and like his stuff. So that's a really really good one too. And I know Noah would disagree with me on this one, but it's one of my personal favorites. It's called Secret Empire, and it's Captain America, where he essentially he becomes a Nazi. He's Hydra, and he takes over the world, and he creates his own. He dethrones the Avengers, and he creates his own Hydra version of the Avengers.
What a jerk.
And everyone's like, Cap, what the fuck? You were one of us. And he's like, no, this whole time I was a sleeper agent. And yeah, that one's really good too. And that one like affects the whole. And I know there's a bunch too with like DC, but yeah, I'm talking a lot. No, you can take it away.
I think it's bullshit turning a character that was created by two Jewish immigrants that was
Oh
created to
God.
be a fighter against fascism into a Nazi Hydra agent simply for sales is fucking bullshit, and I'm never gonna be over it. And it's stupid. But yeah, I will say if you're ever
Oh my God.
I will sorry, I'm going insane. I will say if you've ever heard of like an event called like Secret Empire or Invasion or da, 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 whatever event that you think is interesting, there's going to be a book for that. There's going to be a collected edition with every issue you need to know, and you can just pick it up and read it.
What I mean
Uh,
to ask is like, is there a
mhm.
particular one
Yeah, I was
that's
about to
okay?
say that. I was about to
Yeah.
say if you want to get into the current state of the X-Men,
Yes.
uh,
Yes. That's what I'm looking
you
for.
you don't have to. There's so much history. The only thing I need you to pick up, listener or whatever, is it's called House and Powers of X. It's a mini series by writer Jonathan Hickman and artist Pepe Larraz, RB Silva, and Marte Garcia.
How do you know
Uh,
that? Did you memorize that? There's no way.
I have the Wikipedia in front of me.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
good.
that's how I do it. I always have my like articles up so I can like reference them. So if you ever hear noise, it's me clacking away to find something.
That's
But
smart.
Jonathan Hickman was previously an Avengers writer, and he was in charge of Secret Wars, the one Lewis just referenced.
Jonathan Hickman too is like that's like
Mhm.
Marvel's guy. If you want a good Marvel story, just read anything Jonathan Hickman wrote essentially, and
That's cool to know.
it's a good you're in for a good time.
Mhm.
Awesome.
And I will say that if you want to know the modern state of X-Men, you need to read House of X and Powers of X. You don't need to know too much. Like if you just know the Fox movies, that's all you really need to know because they
Okay.
introduce characters, they introduce concepts.
Mm.
It's a very wacky, it's very science fiction. It's very much technology versus humanist. It's very much evolution. It's a poem. It's now. It's I could talk this whole event up so much, but House and Powers of X, it literally reestablished the mutants, brought sales up so much. It's a really good story. It redefined their place in the Marvel universe, and it's fantastic. So if you want to get into X-Men and you want the current modern stuff, like what's happening with them right now, you need to pick up House and Powers of X. Aside from that, pick up whatever story looks interesting to you. Dark
Oh yeah,
Phoenix, Necrosha, whatever. You should be okay. But House and Powers of X is a must event. Aside from that, I will really just say grab whatever's interesting to you. This July and August, DC is doing a mini event is just when they have like it's not like life changing, it's not changing the universe, it's just like a bunch of
Just
books
changing a
that will
block.
affect a bunch of characters.
okay,
It's called Night Terrors. It's supposed to be like a horror thing for July and August. Like it's gonna be like what's your worst fears? And there's a lot of cool artists. So I would
that's
say
the
that looks
incorrect
interesting.
season for that kind of topic. They have to do that in October. That's
No, we need to do it now. Let's make the summer scary. Let's make it a little kooky. Let's make it a little crazy, little kooky. But yeah, Night Terrors are coming out. But yeah, that's the only two that really comes to mind. I can't really think of any like specific event. Yeah, that's kind of it for
cool, man.
me regarding events.
A lot of comic book wisdom from the both of you. Thank you very much.
No
Um,
worries, no worries.
ready to hop
Also,
into
you could read Dark Metal for DC. It's one of like the
I would
big
say
ones.
don't read Dark Metal.
Or the Batman Who Laughs run. That one's really good.
I don't read that one either.
He's just being
why.
he's being a comic snob. Don't worry.
No, I okay. I feel like Dark Knight's Metal is you're not gonna really like it unless you know a bunch of shit. So I feel like
Okay,
mhm,
Also, one that I never finished it, but I enjoyed it. So I don't know how I'd end it. So no, I won't argue with him on this one if he like.
mhm.
But DC they had their thing called DC Rebirth, and that was their big comeback. It was like, oh, this is a rebirth universe, the mainline content. And throughout DC Rebirth, they were hinting that the Watchmen were in some way inform big players in this universe, and it was never known. And they finally did this giant crossover event called Doomsday Clock, and it's where the DC heroes and where the Watchmen heroes invade the DC universe, and shit goes down. I never finished it, but I enjoyed the majority of what I read. So that's a good one for you to read because it has like Doctor Manhattan in it, and he's like going toe to toe with Superman, and it's like questions about like what are we doing? Does this just did the ends justify the means sort of thing?
yeah.
So it's a really good one too.
I've heard of Watchmen a
Mm,
lot. I've heard a lot about them in like comic book history as being a really, really central and important and frankly good storyline. So
Yeah, the Watchmen is really good. One if like the comic, I think is Zack Snyder who directed the movie, and
yeah.
he essentially took the comic like page for page, turned it into a movie with like slight differences. But other than that, like I would say, if you watch the movie, you don't need to read the comic. If you read the
is
comic, you don't
that
need to
like
watch the movie.
is that like how it's supposed to go when you make a comic book movie? You take it as close as you can to the original source material.
Yeah, see, then this is why you can never fucking like appease nerds because then you have those people like, oh, they didn't do anything good, they didn't do anything new. Then you have those people like, oh, like of course they fucked it up too much. They just used the name.
Do you guys have a favorite comic book movie in particular?
Favorite comic book movie. The first thing that came to mind was Captain America 2 with the
What
Winter
about you know?
Soldier.
Mhm.
He
Winter
wasn't even
Soldier was
listening.
awesome.
No, I was. I will be very frank. I would not recommend the series countdown simply because Doomsday Clock simply because Doomsday Clock feels like okay, comics off you'll hear okay, you'll
I'm wanting
hear
to hear this
phra-
developed opinion. This is what I'm here for.
you'll hear phrases thrown around like rebirth or New 52 or Marvel Now, and you hear all these brandings, and it'll make things complicated because you're like, what does that mean? Is the universe starting over? What is it? A lot of these are industry labels in order to push out a new wave of books. It's a part of marketing. It's a part of a shakeup
Oh.
in the writing and creative teams. So, what Doomsday Clock's main function in DC Comics was to reintroduce and recalibrate the universe to shed out a new wave of comic books. And the thing about Doomsday Clock is that I think it's a fine story, but it only truly hits hard if you've been reading for a long time. Because what Doomsday Clock does, it makes a meta commentary on the industry, and at the very end, it reintroduces the multiverse. And I strongly believe you don't care something is gone unless you knew about it in the first place. It's like if you go to a restaurant and they're like, "Oh, hey, we have mozzarella sticks now." You're like, "Oh, cool." But that doesn't mean much to you, but someone who's been going there for years and you're like, "Oh, you brought back the mozzarella sticks." That means more to that person that's already been there.
Okay.
Right? So I feel like that's a big thing with Doomsday Clock because Doomsday Clock does it like reintroduces the multiverse. It does a bunch of different narrative things. It brings in sort of the Watchmen universe to DC. It expands things. And while it's a fine enough story standalone, it really just it means more if you're aware of the comic industry and comic publication history. So I'm not sure if I would recommend it, but for like a newbie, but it's an interesting read. That's I was thinking I was formulating all that in my head, so that's what I was talking about. But comic book
Good to know.
movie, um, I think if I'd have to say my top 3, that's a really tough one. I
Yeah.
think Guardians 3, the
Dang.
first Blank Panther, and Wonder Woman.
All right. It's a pretty good trio, especially
Mhm.
that new Guardians movie. I've been telling everybody to watch out for the animal cruelty in that because it's just so
Mhm.
intense.
Oh
Um,
yeah, animals are like spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Animals are shot.
it's
That's crazy.
oh my god, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, animals are shot.
It's Jesus Christ, that sounds so like for
Like in
a
the
Marvel
head,
movie.
in the
Yeah,
stomach.
dude, it's terrible. My mom is someone who's extraordinarily sympathetic when it comes to like fictional characters.
Mhm,
Um, and she follows along with Marvel because one, it's hugely pop culture right now, right? And it's also just
mhm.
sort of like a fun movie to go see. And I straight up told her like, there's animal cruelty you're not going to be happy with. As a result, she hasn't seen it, which is it's unfortunate. I'd still recommend Guardians 3 to a lot of people,
Mhm.
but massive disclaimer: animal cruelty is really intense,
Yeah.
big
But
time.
what's not cruel is us ending this podcast. So,
I'm okay with it, actually.
I'm cool with it. It's been a
I'm
fun
okay
time.
yeah, I'm
Thank you
fine with
guys
that, I'm
for.
so
good.
It's
usually
really clear politically.
we always end it with homework, like something we need to assign the listeners. So, Kevin, what's their homework? What are you
Um,
assigning them?
Go see a studio like a movie. In particular, my two favorites of all time, Coraline, you've probably seen it, and Kubo and the Two Strings. You will have an absolutely fantastic time seeing it. Very charming movies, and also an absolute centerpiece of modern animation. And if you've seen those, go see Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio because he's
That's the
one of my
Netflix
favorite
one, right?
directors. Yes, it
I
is
need to
available on
watch that. I
Netflix.
need to watch that
He's
one.
one of my favorite directors, and he has recently announced that his main focus going forward after he finishes live action projects is going to be purely animation because, in his own words, animation is the purest form of storytelling. Fantastic to kick off to that. Highly recommend. Go check it out.
All right, you heard it here, folks. Now, Noah, what's your homework?
Everyone's homework is to, go to the comic book store and pick up Tom Taylor's Titans book and support it. Not because I think it's the greatest book, but because I need everyone to buy Titans. It's
My
decent,
Titans
I'm
like Teen
enjoying it, but
Titans.
well, they're grown up now. They don't
Oh,
they're not
dude,
Teen Titans, they're grown up. They're taking
that's so
okay,
cool.
okay, they're taking Justice League is over. Justice League,
You've made
whack,
this joke before.
sad, pathetic. Titans, tight as fuck. It's all about Titans now, baby.
I grew up on Teen Titans. I'd be happy to do that. That sounds like fun homework.
My
Yeah.
homework is it's a two-parter. It's to not go by Titans.
No.
And it's to go watch Cyberpunk Edge Runners because I've been watching it again and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a good.
That was a great. That was animated so fun. It's a very popping color scheme.
All right, but that's all we got for this week. We went a little bit over time, but who cares? All right.
Kevin's worth
yeah.
it.
All right, Kevin. If people want to find you, where can they find you?
I'm not I don't post content much. I just have personal social media, but please feel free to come say hello. I'll be on Instagram for the most part at fake_Kevin Bacon.
All right, and Noah, what about you? Where can people find you?
You can find me at Noah is Garcia on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to check out my photography, you can go to Noah_Garcia_photography.
Check out his photography. This man photographed my wedding.
And if you want to just hang out with me as a person, I'm in Missouri currently at Birds Pecan Delights on East First Street in Missouri. So come there and I'll meet you.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm there right now.
If people want to follow me, you can on Instagram and Twitter at Luis Gutierrez, and you can feel free to follow my work. All you have to do is just Google my name, Luis Joshua Gutierrez, and you will find links to my IGN work and my GameSpot work. But yeah, we will see you guys later. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.